Today, we're making a chessboard.
I'm going to be building this chessboard out of walnut and maple for the main part of the board, and a cherry and walnut border. I'm going to start by cutting the maple and walnut down to size and thickness, first at the table saw and then at the bandsaw, and finally bringing it over to the planer. Next, I'll cut out 2-inch wide strips, 16 inches long, and I'll join them into a pinstripe pattern. And that'll form the beginning of the checkerboard pattern for our chessboard. Once the glue dried, I was ready to trim up the edges a little bit and cut new 2-inch wide strips running in the opposite direction. But this is where I made my first mistake.
I mathed wrong. A chessboard is 8 by 8. 8 squares across, 8 squares down, all the same size. I'm doing 2-inch squares. And I created a board that was 16 inches wide, 16 inches in the other dimension. And I forgot about blade kerf. So when I went to cut out my pinstripes, I ended up with something closer to like 7 3/4 columns like this. So now I'm going to be creating just one single strip to add on to my board. If nothing else, woodworking is full of opportunities to learn how to cover up your mistakes.
I didn't have much maple left, but I managed to cobble together a few pieces, joint them up, trim them to width, and run them through the planer. I then cut another piece of walnut and glued the 2 strips together. Once the glue dried, I was able to cut out new little combinations of walnut and maple squares, then join them into a new 16-inch long strip. And with that done, I was finally able to get back on track and assemble the checkerboard pattern for my chessboard. I hit the top with some 60 grit sandpaper to knock down some imperfections, and then I glued it to a 1/2-inch plywood base. This plywood base is going to help with wood movement and give me something to build off of. I had left the plywood a little bit oversized, so I cut it down on the table saw and then snugged it up with a flush trim bit on the router table. From there, I was ready to assemble my cherry and walnut border pieces. I rough cut 45-degree miters at the table saw and checked to make sure my sizes were roughly in the ballpark. Jointed the edge of the chessboard and the border pieces, then quickly cleaned everything up at the shooting board. Then clamped everything together. I added a chamfer to the outside edge, cleaned up a few of my corners, and then it was time for final sanding. I vacuumed off as much dust as I could and then used Rubio Monocoat cleaner to do a final pass before finish. I finished the chessboard with Rubio Monocoat Pure, which is one of my favorite finishes of all time. It leaves the wood feeling like wood. It's not as durable as some other finishes, but it's easy to repair, and I think it's going to do just fine for a chessboard. To give the board a really nice final touch and class things up a bit, I applied this flocked contact paper to the underside. I've played around with flocking fibers in the past and it's always been a bit hit and miss, but this contact paper method is really, really nice and doesn't take long to do. After a quick trim with an X-Acto knife, the board is all ready to go.